The Christmas season of 1945 was meant to be a time of joy for the Sodder family. The cold, crisp air of West Virginia had blanketed the town of Fayetteville, where the Sodder family had lived for years, nestled comfortably in their cozy home on the outskirts of town. George and Jenny Sodder, along with their 10 children, had carved out a life that was as hardworking as it was loving. George, a first-generation Italian immigrant, had worked tirelessly as a trucking company owner, while Jenny tended to their bustling household. It was a home filled with laughter, love, and promise, until that fateful night. On December 24, 1945, the Sodder family's life was forever changed in a matter of hours. The fire that broke out in the small house they called home began around 1 a.m., engulfing their 2-story residence within minutes. George and Jenny woke up to the smell of smoke, the sound of crackling wood, and the roar of flames as they rushed to wake their children. But in the chaotic scramble to escape, 5 of their children, Martha, 14, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, Betty, 5, and Sylvester, 2, vanished without a trace. Despite the efforts of George and Jenny to save their children, only the parents and 4 of their children made it out of the burning house alive. But as the fire raged through the night, something was off. The fire department arrived hours later to find that the house had been completely destroyed, but no remains of the children were found. The firefighters assumed that the children had perished in the flames, but George and Jenny weren't so convinced. The absence of remains, no charred bones, no ash, nothing, was simply too strange. George and Jenny's suspicion began to grow, and with it, the haunting question that would never leave their minds. Were their children really lost to the flames, or had something more sinister happened? In the wake of the tragedy, George and Jenny Sodder were left in a state of utter devastation. Not only had they lost their home, but the very thing they cherished most, their children, had been ripped away from them. Yet, despite the overwhelming pain, they clung to a single, unshakable belief: their children were still alive. George began to question the fire's origins. He knew, for one, that the fire had spread far too quickly for a normal house fire. He was certain that the blaze had started deliberately. He also noticed something strange in the aftermath. None of the wires leading to the house's fuse box were burned, yet the house was completely consumed by flames. Could it have been caused by faulty electrical wiring? Or had someone intentionally cut the power before setting the fire? Jenny, too, was perplexed. She recalled hearing strange noises and seeing shadows around the house the night before the fire, but she couldn't understand what had caused them. Had they been the work of an intruder, or was it just her imagination running wild in the wake of the tragedy? Soon, their doubts began to crystallize. The idea that their children had simply vanished in the flames felt too impossible to accept. George and Jenny spent months investigating the fire, visiting local authorities, and pursuing any leads they could find. They received no answers. Just when it seemed as though the investigation would stall, new pieces of evidence began to emerge. The first clue came in the form of a local detective named O'Connor, who had followed up on some of the strange aspects of the fire. O'Connor was convinced that the children had been kidnapped before the fire had even started. He pointed to a few curious details. There was a man seen near the house the night of the fire, and several neighbors had claimed to have seen strange vehicles parked near the Sodder home in the days leading up to the tragedy. As Jenny and George continued to dig deeper, they began to uncover even more unsettling details. One of the most disturbing pieces of evidence came from an eyewitness, a truck driver, who claimed to have seen the 5 missing children in a vehicle traveling along the highway just hours after the fire. The truck driver was adamant that he had seen them alive, looking out of the vehicle's window, and he had even noted the strange way the vehicle was moving, erratic and in a hurry. But what made this eyewitness account even more compelling was that he described a man who was driving the truck as someone familiar with the family. He said that the man looked like a local business owner who had been known to frequently interact with George and Jenny. Was this man somehow involved in the disappearance of their children? The thought haunted the Sodders. As George and Jenny's investigation continued, they began to discover more strange circumstances surrounding the fire. The Sodders had learned that the fire chief, a man named W.R. White, had arrived late to the scene. White's actions during the fire were puzzling. He didn't seem to be conducting a thorough investigation, and his behavior appeared to be dismissive of the Sodder family's concerns. Could the fire chief be involved in the cover-up, or was it simply a matter of incompetence? Then, there was the issue of the fire department's report. In the initial investigation, the report indicated that the fire was caused by faulty electrical wiring. But, upon further inspection, George discovered that the report didn't match the conditions of the house. The report failed to mention the absence of the children's remains, something that could not be overlooked. Further complicating matters, the Sodders discovered that the fire department's records had been incomplete or altered. Several documents had mysteriously gone missing, and others had been tampered with. Had there been an intentional effort to cover up what had really happened that night? Despite their efforts to reach out to authorities, George and Jenny were met with silence and resistance. Their pleas for answers seemed to be ignored, and soon, they began to feel as though they were fighting an uphill battle with no allies. Years passed, and the case of the missing Sodder children became a grim reminder of the unanswered questions that haunted their lives. Despite George and Jenny's persistent efforts to find the truth, no further breakthroughs came, and the official investigation into the fire was closed. As the years stretched on, the Sodder family's grief was compounded by the lack of resolution. The lingering feeling that their children were still alive somewhere, hidden and taken from them, gnawed at George and Jenny. They refused to believe that their children had been consumed by the flames. They kept their memories alive by continuing to search, refusing to give up hope. The Sodder children's disappearance became an enigma that would remain unsolved, leaving the family in a perpetual state of uncertainty and heartbreak. Yet, even in their grief, George and Jenny held on to the belief that their children were out there somewhere, waiting to be found. As the decades passed, the mystery of the Sodder children's disappearance became the subject of intense speculation. One theory that gained traction over the years was the idea that the children had been kidnapped as part of an illegal adoption ring. Some believed that the children had been taken by individuals who had wanted to adopt them, and the fire had been set to cover up their abduction. Others speculated that the children had been taken by a vengeful person with a personal vendetta against George. The possibility of a revenge plot or even a business-related dispute gone awry was not out of the question. There was also the theory that the fire had been intentionally set as part of a larger conspiracy to silence the Sodders. Some believed that the children's disappearance was part of a much larger cover-up involving people with power and influence in the town. Could it have been an elaborate scheme to make the Sodder family disappear without a trace? In the years following the fire, Jenny and George continued to live with the memory of their lost children, their hearts heavy with the unanswered questions that would never be resolved. They never stopped hoping that one day, the truth would come to light and their children would return to them. However, as time went on, it became increasingly difficult to hold on to that hope. They lived in a world where they were constantly reminded of the void left in their lives, a world where their family's story became part of a larger national mystery. The pain of their loss, coupled with the inability to gain closure, made their lives feel like an endless search for something that might never be found. The story of the Sodder children's disappearance remains an open case to this day. There are still no conclusive answers to the mystery of what happened that night in 1945. Some believe the children were taken, while others believe they perished in the fire. Yet, one thing remains certain. George and Jenny's fight for the truth has never truly ended. The pain of losing their children is a wound that has never healed, and the questions left unanswered by that fateful night still linger in the air. The truth may never come to light, but the memory of the Sodder children, and the mystery surrounding their disappearance, continues to haunt the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, forever. The fire may have burned the house down, but it never extinguished the flame of hope in the hearts of George and Jenny Sodder. They were left to wonder, vanished in the fire, or taken from them by forces they could never understand. What do you think about this story? Do you think the Sodder children were truly lost in the fire, or is there a darker, hidden truth lurking behind their disappearance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about this mystery. Could it have been an accident, or was it something more sinister? And hey, If you found this story as chilling and intriguing as I did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Let's keep the conversation going. Your input is always welcome.